Hello everyone, this is part 7 of What If Naruto Had to Prove Himself, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. It was only mid-afternoon, but to the busy workers of the Leaf Village Help Center it felt like they'd been going at it for days. Tanbei Tayashi was just easing down into her chair behind the counter when she heard the chime on the door ring. She groaned. Not another one already, she'd just finished her 8th errand in a row, and her feet, not to mention the rest of her tired muscles, were killing her. She was relieved, then, when she saw it was not another needy villager but their ninja helper coming through the door. Choji, she breathed thankfully. He paused mid-step and glanced at her curiously. Suddenly conscious of her tone, she coughed lightly twice, trying not to let her embarrassment show. "Yes, sir, how did it go?" He grinned. "Piece of cake. I pulled the stump out and leveled the field. They shouldn't have any trouble building now." She gave him a warm smile. "What would we do without you, Choji?" "Answer help requests, I suspect," he joked. Then he seemed to remember something, and he reached into his pouch. "Speaking of which, I picked up another one out there that someone wanted me to post on the board." Tanbei slumped and let her head droop forward. "Okay," she said with a weary sigh. "Let's hear it." One beautiful young lady, preferably a tired, overworked volunteer helper to spend a relaxing evening at a formal dance with one honest shinobi. Her eyes snapped open and she looked up with open-mouthed surprise. Was he really? Choji was staring at her with a playful glint in his eyes, his expression asking the unstated question. When she finally found her voice, she had to turn her face down again to hide her blush. "Well, I don't know," she began very matter-of-fact. She glanced over at her grinning coworker. "Kaya is probably better suited for it, she's prettier than me." Her friend nodded cheerfully. "That may be true. But I doubt it," Choji interrupted, smirking. Tanbei turned a bit pinker. Kaya shot him a cool glance. "But you two are the overactive overachievers here," she continued. "Besides, this sounds serious. We'd better put our best workers on it, right?" She gave the other girl a pointed look and an exaggerated nod. Tanbei focused intently on a small scratch in the countertop, a secret smile on her lips. "I might be needed here." Her tone made it an inquiry. Her friend rolled her eyes and chuckled. "Go. We can handle one afternoon without you guys stealing all the work, right, everyone?" The other volunteers voiced their enthusiastic teasing agreement. Tanbei hugged Kaya gratefully and stood up. Choji cleared his tea. "Now, to find a suitable ninja for you. He should probably be handsome, intelligent, maybe I should go see if Shikamaru is available." Tanbei's eyes narrowed and she stepped around the counter. "Or maybe there's a suitable ninja right here." She smirked and punched his shoulder lightly. "If I got to choose from every man in the Leaf Village, I'd take my humble helper any day." His smile grew and he scratched in his hair abashedly. She stepped a little closer. "If it's a formal dance, I'll need to go back to my house to change into something nicer." Choji blushed a little. "Well, since I'm your escort, I'd better get started escorting you." Naruto glanced around and ran a hand through his hair, nervously double-checking his mental list. He dropped Hinata off at the Hyuga compound so she could get ready, and then gone back to his place to do the same. Now here he stood, freshly washed, immaculate in his spotless new outfit, and nearly out of his wits with nervousness. What on earth was making him so anxious? Like not even a hair out of place was acceptable, he'd even felt compelled to clean his apartment. The place looked nicer now than it had in months. His eyes fell on his coat drd neatly over his desk chair and his thoughts flashed to Hinata again. He blinked. "I guess that answers that question." Naruto chuckled weakly at himself. He could face down hordes of bloodthirsty mercenaries and elite shinobi warriors without a twinge, but a date, his first real date, had him jumpy. Go figure. He looked at the time, glanced out his window, and headed for the door. It probably wasn't quite time yet, but he figured his nervous energy would bleed out easier on the road than waiting in his room. Before Naruto left, though, he noticed a letter in his drop box. It had that official looked at it, but it didn't carry Granny Tsunde's seal. Curious, he tore it open. His eyes widened. When your trials are complete and you are Hokage, we may speak as equals once again. Do not disappoint. 5th Kazekage, Sand Village. Gaara. Naruto just shook his head in wonder. He didn't know how the leader of their allied village knew about the trial by leaves so soon. Did the old lady send word, or was their information network as good as ever? A grin sprouted on his face. He didn't know, but it felt good to hear that even Gaara had confidence in him, masked though it was under his usual gruff, unemotional demeanor. Naruto was about to put the note back when he saw that a second letter had been included with the first. He frowned. It was addressed to a pineapple head. He tore it open as well and blanched. Hey idiot, quit dragging your feet already. If you really care about this girl, then hurry up and commit. Ask the question. I know you're not the brightest ninja around, compared to me, anyway, but you certainly ought to know when it's time to make the decision. Superior intellect of the sand. Temari. Fire rose to his cheeks and his mind whirled. What is she talking about? Does she mean Hinata and me? I know her, but I mean, I do like her a lot, maybe even. B, but what does she mean? Th the question. Commit. B, but Hinata A and me, I mean were but. Gar. Get a hold of yourself. Naruto shook his head quickly to clear it. There had to be some sort of mistake. How would Temari even know about them? She'd never written to him before, so why now? He looked at the letter again. Pineapple head, he'd never been called that before, but it sounded familiar. Where had he? He slapped his forehead. Shikamaru. Of course. The lazy ninja and the sand kunoichi had some weird, undefined relationship. The letter must have been meant for him, and given to Naruto with Gaara's by mistake. He gave a relieved chuckle. Why had he thought it could possibly have been meant for himself? Then he paused. And why had it bent him so out of shape? He glanced at the time again and grimaced. He slipped both letters into a pocket and headed out the door. He'd chalk it up to his own already jumpy nerves for the moment. Tenten knocked at the door and frowned. Neji hadn't come to pick her up, so, as they had agreed beforehand, she'd come to check on him. She frowned because that meant he'd overdone it with Naruto in his trial, knocking himself out flat and making her worry about him. Good evening, Lady Tenten. What brings you to honor our home? She glanced down at Hanabi Hyuga, standing with prim posture and perfect poise, and quirked an eyebrow. Come on Hanabi, it's me. You don't have to be so stuffy and formal, you know. The younger girl's pose relaxed and she smiled. Naruto said the same thing. Father insists I stay and practice, though. Naruto's here. Hanabi's smile turned mischievous. He stopped by a little while ago. It was pretty entertaining. He was almost as skittish picking up Hinata as she was preparing for his arrival. He was dumbstruck when he saw her, too. I don't think either of them had formed a complete sentence by the time they left. She stepped aside to let the older woman through. Tenten laughed as she entered. Naruto speechless. That does sound funny. She heard Hanabi close the door behind her. So, I take it you're here for Neji, right? Yup, she answered with a sigh. She turned back to her young friend. He hasn't left yet, has he? The Hyuga girl gave her a skeptical look. You're kidding, right? As far as I can tell, he hasn't even woken up since he got home. She winced. That bad, huh? Naruto must really have taken it out of him. I told him those pills were a bad idea. But he wouldn't listen, Hanabi finished knowingly. She giggled. Boys never do. Well, you know the way, right? I have to get back to practice. Tenten nodded. Sure thing. See you later, Hanabi. Good luck. Thanks. With father watching, I'll need it. She called as she ran off. Tenten smiled after her friend, then turned and headed off through the halls. Since she knew the path by heart, she took the time to admire the place in passing. She ran a hand over the fine wood paneling on one wall. Everything felt so noble, so full of history here. She'd often wondered what it would be like to live in one of these big clan complexes, but she knew it would never happen unless. She blushed at the thought and hurried on to her destination. When she arrived at Neji's door, she knocked quietly. Neji. There was no answer, so she knocked a little harder. Neji, are you in there? This time there was a loud thump followed by a muffled crash. Neji. Yanking his door open, she saw him slumped over his desk, his strewn bedding tangled around his foot and his lamp overturned. Are you okay? She exclaimed, hurrying over. He shot shakily upright and turned toward her, pocketing something in a way it was shielded from her eyes. Yes, I am fine, he replied calmly. I merely rose too quickly. She paused at his odd behavior. What did he have to hide from her? Are you sure? You don't even look like you should be standing yet. He shook his head. No, I am actually quite rested. I am sorry to keep you waiting. If you will step out so I can change, we will be on our way. She street USD his face for any clues. Finally, hesitantly, she shrugged. If it was something she needed to know about, he would tell her. All right, just don't take too long, we're already late. He looked relieved. Of course. Jiraiya went through his list one more time, putting things in his bag as he checked them off in his head. When the last piece fit snugly in its place, a crooked smile twisted its way onto his face. Perfect. His old kit was complete. Now he had everything he needed to give those kids one heck of a time. The frog sage chuckled as he headed out of the apartment the village kept for him and down the stairs. How long had it been since he'd crashed a party like the old days? He pushed open the building's front door and nearly ran right into Shizune. Tsunde's personal assistant stood directly in his path, arms crossed and expression cold and stern. Far from daunted, he just laughed. Hey there, little lady. She quirked an eyebrow. What brings you over this way? A few things have changed around the village since your last visit, she began in a no-nonsense tone. Lady Tsunde sent me to be your guide tonight so I can help you be where you need to be and ensure that you don't get lost. Jiraiya's face twitched behind his grin. So that's how you want to play, eh Tsunde? Yeah, well, thanks anyway, but I can manage just fine on my own. Oh no, the lady insists, she said innocently, contrasting sharply with her icy glare. We certainly wouldn't want you to accidentally wander into any sort of trouble, that would be very unfortunate. Now, where are you going, Master Jiraiya? Shopping, he lied through his teeth. Shizune glanced down at the pack at his side. Like a child caught at the cookie jar, he tried to hide it from her too late. But your bag is already full, she noted simply, ignoring his antics. Before Jiraiya could muster an excuse, Shizune snapped her fingers. Oh, I see. You must have found some old junk you wish to sell to buy provisions for your journey. How very thoughtful of you, Master Jiraiya. I know exactly the place. Shall we be going? She gave him a look that dared him to defy her. Of course, he gritted through his now pasted-on brittle smile. She pointed off down the street. He stiffly marched off that way, Shizune following closely and 100% attentive. Okay, this was just a bit of a setback. Well, this sure looks like the right place, Naruto said skeptically. He and Hinata stood in front of a large warehouse that, from outward appearances at least, didn't look as though it had seen much use recently. A fancy silk curtain hung barely parted in the open door, however, and the wall around it had been lavishly decorated by a montage of breathtaking, exotic, lifelike animals. Hinata leaned forward to peer at the slip of paper he held. It does match the address Shikamaru gave us. Naruto glanced down. She was right. Still a weird place for a party, he muttered, putting the note back away. Then he turned a bright, somewhat nervous smile on his companion and held out his arm. Well anyway, shall we? Trying not to look too eager, she smiled back and took it. He held the curtain back for them and they stepped through and gasped. They found themselves in the middle of a small town. Not a real one, of course, but a detailed imitation of a flamboyant shop district one might find in some faraway city. The two of them wandered dumbstruck into a maze of vivid, colorful storefronts and vacant stalls covered in boisterous decorations. The warehouse's lights weren't on. Paper lanterns hung on strings simulated street lamps, and they saw that the ceiling just within reach of the light had been painted black with reflective white speckles, a perfect night sky. The lamps had been expertly placed to accent the most vibrant pictures and designs, and the smaller strings of multicolored lights strung between them successfully completed the very festive feeling. It was like walking through a carnival frozen in time by some sort of magic. Then they turned a corner and arrived at the town square. More lanterns and decorations encircled an enormous space of cobblestone-rendered pavement. Standing alone off to the left was an elaborate glass statue of a large bubbling fountain lit up to be dazzling. From its base a painted stream that seemed to babble and splash as one watched wound its way around the far side, passing under a stage built as if it were a bridge, before meandering alongside the pseudo-outdoor cafe complete with a few exotic plants off to the right. And everywhere there were people. There must have been over 100, many chatting out in the square, others relaxing at the cafe's many tables. There you two are. Naruto and Hinata snapped out of their shock to see Ino on Shikamaru's arm approaching from the crowd. She wore a slim, sleeveless, flower-printed yellow dress and a self-satisfied look. Shikamaru had his hands stuffed in the pockets of his simple black tuxedo. The only thing abnormal about his outfit was a stylish grey scarf lazily but artfully drd as if an afterthought over his shoulders. Glad you guys made it, he said casually. Hinata gave a formal bow to their hosts. And we are happy to be here, she said politely. Ino nodded, grinned excitedly and gestured at their surroundings. So, what do you guys think? She asked expectantly. Naruto finally found his voice. It's amazing. How did you guys do all of this? The blonde woman drew herself up in a very dignified manner. We're ninja, remember. We can be highly resourceful when we need to be. She beamed proudly, and even Shikamaru had to smirk. You'd be surprised what so many people can pull together so quickly. And, so you may have noticed, Sai paints very fast and very well. Then her smile turned impish. And speaking of overdoing it, I see someone took my advice about fancier clothes a bit too seriously. No kidding. That was Kiba, clad in a rakish black leather suit with fur accoutrements, sauntering over with a superior look on his face. But at least it's so overblown that we can be sure it's Naruto. He gave them a frank once over and raised an eyebrow. Seriously, what a flashy get-up, you two look like something out of a fairy tale. It was an apt description. Naruto wore snow-white robes reminiscent of shogun dress, gathered at his waist with a crimson belt knotted loosely in front. His flared sleeves ended in golden-hued cuffs, and two bands of the same color climbed up his sides and curled over the outfit's peaked shoulders. He stood tall above the mountains artfully rendered in the fabric at his feet, and a regal sash emblazoned with a pattern of fire crossed from shoulder to hip, bisecting a stylized symbol of the sun on his chest. Hinata was sheathed in a long, silver silk gown. Blue splashes of color adorned its hems. She appeared to glide along the ground on a glassy pool of water while lighter wispy clouds fluttered at the ends of her likewise flared sleeves. Vivid purple ribbon wound around her waist, tied in a large bow behind her. Upward from this belt line rose a band of deep red that split at her end to cross back over her shoulders, tendrils of color tracing outward in an elaborate pattern. She shrank a bit from Kiba's comments. This was her favorite dress, but she'd never worn it in public because it had always seemed a bit much. When Ino had mentioned this would be a formal dance, her thoughts had drifted to it. When they'd actually found an outfit for Naruto that not only matched it perfectly but also fit him so well, she'd been ecstatic. But she was wrong, she'd misjudged, and they'd come overdressed. Now they stuck out and they'd be a laughingstock, and she knew how much Naruto hated to be considered childish and. Yeah, well, so what? Maybe I like fairy tales. She gave a start and glanced at Naruto. He gave her a sly wink before looking right at Kiba. You're just jealous because you all look like ragdolls next to us. Hinata smiled and relaxed. Kiba clutched his heart dramatically as if struck by a kunai. A good shot, I am slain. He said mockingly. Farewell, my lord and lady. Chuckling, he swaggered back the way he came. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Ooh. You're just asking for it, dog boy. He turned back to their other friends and took an involuntary step back. Ino's body had gone rigid and twitching. Her expression was one of unforgiving wrath. Her eyes swore bloody vengeance and heinous M. Hinata clutched his arm a bit tighter. What did I do? Thought Naruto in a panic. Then realization struck and he blanched. Oh man. I just insulted her fashion sense, didn't I? Fortunately, Shikamaru picked just then to intervene. He touched Ino's arm and she whirled her simmering fury on him. Unfazed, he jerked his head back toward the vacant bridge stage. You might want to check on the musicians, Ino. They aren't setting up, and it doesn't look like the vocalist is even here yet. Rage turned to horror in an instant. What? But the party starts in 15 minutes. Shikamaru just shrugged. Not without music, it's not. I have forgotten. The blonde girl turned and practically sprinted for the stage. He watched her go and sighed tiredly. I will never understand how she manages in high heels, he muttered. Behind him, his two friends visibly relaxed. Naruto rubbed the back of his N. Thanks, Shikamaru, he said shakily. I owe you one. The lazy boy turned back to him and looked amused. Yeah you do, big time. You know you gotta watch what you say around her, she'll bite your head off. His tone suggested he was only half joking. He gave the raven-haired girl a reassuring look. Don't worry about it, Hinata. You both look fine. Then he shrugged. The party's technically in your honor anyway, Naruto, although that kinda got lost in the shuffle. You might get a congratulations or two, but nothing special. I can fix that with one announcement, if you want. Naruto hesitated, aware that both Shikamaru and Hinata were waiting for his answer. He knew I'd feel awkward at this sort of thing. This is a chance to avoid all the extra attention. He smiled and shook his head. No, that's okay. Let everyone party for their own reasons. His date brightened, that suggested accurately that he cared more about spending time with her. His lazy friend just smirked, as if he'd been expecting that answer. Naruto's smile turned mischievous. You know, it sounds like you're sure working hard with all of this, Shikamaru. How can you stand putting so much effort into something? Hinata giggled. The other boy took on a comical look of defeat. Don't remind me, he sighed. If I said it wasn't a drag I'd be lying, but, he glanced over his shoulder. His own date was dashing like mad from person to person in the crowd. He smiled. Anyway, just be sure to enjoy yourselves, alright. He looked right at the blonde boy. And, Naruto, every person here thinks of you as a friend. Remember that, okay? Naruto brightened in surprise, then relief. Thanks. He remembered something as the other boy started off. Oh, wait, Shikamaru, that reminds me, I've got a letter for you. It was delivered to my house by mistake. He took out Temari's letter. As Shikamaru accepted it, he said quickly, I didn't know it wasn't mine until I read it. Sorry. Don't worry about it, Shikamaru said dismissively. As he read the letter, his eyes narrowed and his brow twitched once in annoyance. With a sour look, he calmly folded it up again and slipped it into a pocket. Thanks. But now I've got to go find out what else is going wrong around here, so I'll see you both later, okay? They nodded and he strolled off, hands in his pockets. Which left Naruto and Hinata alone on the edge of a very large crowd. Knowing it was a crowd of friends or at least friendly acquaintances didn't do much for their nerves. So they stood there surveying the scene, shifting uneasily and sending anxious glances toward each other. Twice Naruto moved as if to speak. Both times Hinata waited nervously to hear what he would say, acutely aware of both the awkwardness of their position and her own stage fright. Each time he hesitated and closed his mouth without a word, and they went back to shyly eyeing the other partygoers. After a moment or two more of uncomfortable silence, Naruto took a deep breath to try again. He looked at Hinata and hesitated once more. With a defeated sigh and a chagrined smirk, he motioned beyond her with his eyes and asked, Feel like some refreshments? She perked up and nodded, grateful for the escape course he'd found. They turned and threaded their way toward the cafe, skirting the crowds and giving the other guests wide berth. They approached a bar-style counter that was almost empty. A brunette in a simple, modest pink dress sat sipping a beverage between two bouquets of flowers. Chatting with her across the counter was a large boy they both recognized. Choji. He turned to them and grinned. Hey guys. Glad you made it. He gestured to the girl he'd been talking to and asked, You remember Tanbei, right Naruto? Of course. The blonde replied cheerfully, throwing his arms behind his head. His flared sleeves made the motion awkward. He blinked and sputtered against the fabric, slapping his face. How's it going at the help center? A light laugh at his predicament settled into a wry smirk. It's as busy as always. There just never seems to be an end to the work. The other day was the first time the board's been clear in years. Thanks again for your help, by the way. You made a lot of folks' days, including ours. No problem, Naruto mumbled bashfully. Then he cleared his tea and turned to the girl waiting patiently next to him. Anyway, Hinata, this is Tanbei. With a playful look he continued, she got to boss us around the other day when I was working with Choji. An indignant, hey, sounded from the girl in question. Hinata gave a giggle, then stepped forward and bowed her head. My name is Hinata Hyuga. Nice to meet you. Tanbei gave Naruto one last annoyed punch on the arm before giving Hinata her attention. As the girl talk began, Naruto turned to his friend with a smirk. So Choji, are you the bartender tonight? Wearing a dressy red suit and green velvet vest and bow tie, the hefty boy certainly looked the part, but he shook his head. Nah, Ino just asked me to give out drinks and keep an eye on the snacks until the party starts. Snacks? What got? Choji laughed. Tarts, cakes, cookies, all kinds of pastries. For drinks we've got water, lemonade, 2 or 3 kinds of punch. You know, party stuff. And don't worry, nothing's spiked. For one thing, Kurenai-sensei over there would have a fit, and my folks would never hear the end of it. He leaned forward and whispered conspiratorially, you see, my clan agreed to cater for tonight, so I can personally guarantee the quality. Naruto's mouth watered. With a sparkle in his eye, he began, do you think maybe you could? Choji laughed again. No, Naruto, you have to wait for the start like everyone else. Just a few minutes longer and you can have all you want. Then maybe we'll see you guys on the dance floor, NE. The blonde's expression soured. Yeah, maybe. The hefty boy gave him a quizzical look. Naruto, you're not nervous, are you? Yes, no. No, of course not. At Choji's skeptical stare, Naruto grimaced and shook his head. It's just I've never danced in public, you know. Choji quirked an eyebrow. Really? I seem to remember this one goofy little jig you did at our first Chunin exams outside the forest of. That's not what I mean and you know it. Naruto snapped irritably. He glanced over at the girls. I don't want to embarrass her, he said quietly. He jerked back again when he felt knuckles rapping on his head. Ow, ow, ow. Hey, cut it out. What are you doing? His hefty friend was searching his face with an inquisitive frown. I'm looking for my confident friend. His name is Naruto, and that guy never lets anything intimidate him. Is he home? When Naruto swatted his hand away peevishly, Choji sighed. It wasn't your dancing that made her like you, you know. The blonde hesitated, then nodded. Then it's sure not going to make her dislike you. Choji shrugged. I don't even know what you're worried about. I'm probably going to look like a fool out there, but I'm just set to enjoy it. Naruto pondered this a moment. Just as he was about to respond, a noise drew their attention back toward Tanbei and Hinata. Both girls were bright pink and shaking with giggles, trying valiantly to hold back the laughter and not look at their respective dates. Said boys glanced back at each other with raised eyebrows. Think we ought to find out what they're talking about. Definitely. Neji, are you sure you're okay? Concern tinged Tenten's voice as she once again posed the same question. He tried to look calm as he answered. Of course. Why do you ask? You're shaking. Visibly. Neji looked down and his expression caught. His hands were indeed trembling. Even my own limbs sense my nervousness. He almost laughed at himself. I must be more drained than I thought. They had just come out upon the village square. He leaned against one of the nearby stalls, crossing his arms to calm them. I will be fine if I rest a moment. Before she could respond, a voice cried out, Tenten. It's a disaster, you've got to help. Ino hurried up to them, looking as frantic as she sounded. Ino, what's wrong? What's happened? Tenten said with alarm. She and Neji tensed, scanning for trouble. We don't have a singer. They hitched. Come again? Tenten asked in disbelief. It's true. The musicians won't play without a vocalist and she got hung up on the way and won't be here on time and we can't start the party without music, so you've got to help, you've just got to. The blonde spoke all in a rush, oblivious to the other girl's expression. Tenten heaved a tired sigh and muttered, It's Ino. I should have known. Neji donned a small smirk and leaned back again. The brunette looked back at her perplexed friend and asked, Okay, so the vocalist is late. What do you want me to do about it? Sing in her place, Ino said hopefully. Tenten gaped. You've got to be. Just until she gets here. Please. What makes you think I even can sing? Ino frowned. Lee said you have a great voice. He said you've actually even performed with this group before, so you already know the music, too. Inwardly, Neji winced. Tenten's jaw clenched even as her cheeks reddened. He swore he'd never breathe a word of that mission. The traitor, she muttered darkly. Here you are. They all turned to see Shikamaru ambling up to them. Upon seeing Tenten and Neji, he rocked back on his heels. Turning on the blonde girl with exasperation, he asked, Ino, you're not still bugging people with that, are you? Don't be so troublesome, it's not a big deal. People are not going to leave because we start a little late. Ino looked mortified, then outraged. Not a big deal. A little late. How can you say that? The classiest parties always start right on time, and we put too much work into this to let it go down the drains. She whirled back to the other girl. Tenten, you've got to sing. Please. I've already asked everyone else I can think of, but no one wants to leave the dates. Neji perked up at this. Shikamaru glanced at him curiously. Tenten didn't notice. Well, what makes you think I want to leave mine? She demanded, shooting Neji a concerned glance. Before Ino could speak, the Hyuga spoke up. Actually, Tenten, I don't mind if you would help out. In fact, it would give me occasion to rest and recover as I wait. The other boy nodded slowly and gave a smirk in understanding. Tenten, caught off guard, began to stutter, but. Shikamaru cut her off. Well, when you think about it, it's not such a bad idea. You can't really do much for Neji if he's just tired, and this way he can be good to go when you're done and ready to dance. At the brunette's silence, Neji pressed, go ahead, Tenten. I'd like to hear your singing again. I agree with Lee, you have a beautiful voice. Tenten blushed, a pleased smile spreading on her lips. All right, she said finally. Ino gave a cheer and pulled her friend into a fierce hug, then seized her hand and led off toward the stage at a stumbling pace. Shikamaru turned as if to go, but lingered. Nice move, he offered back at the Hyuga with a sly smile. The boy smirked back, faintly. You going to ask her tonight? At this, Neji's expression hardened and he just stared. Shikamaru. Ino's voice called irritably. The lazy boy gave an amused snort and a shrug. Right. Better leave you to your wrestling, then. And with that he strolled after the girls. Wrestling, I suppose that is a good word for it. Expression sour, Neji found his way to an unoccupied table and sat down. In a way, he was glad for the chance to separate from Tenten, because it was not fatigue that was making his hands tremble. Can I really do this? He may have resolved to follow through earlier that afternoon, but now that it came down to the moment he was having second thoughts. He looked down at the robes he wore. They were finer fabric than normal, but otherwise identically the traditional garb of the Hyuga clan. Tradition, what he was considering went entirely against his clan's tradition. As far as he knew, no one, not even branch members, had ever dared it in recent memory. None but perhaps one or two of the clan elders would approve. They would call it a betrayal of the clan's history, and there was a chance they would turn their backs on him. His worth as a prodigy of their arts could only counteract so much. A cheer went up from the crowd. He saw the girls on center stage, heard Ino making announcements, but the words did not register. His father had not cared for the traditional Hyuga way, so he would not have let it stop him. Yet Hisashi had SD for family. Could he, Neji, pursue a choice that might lead him away from them? The music began with a fast, spirited dance. The crowd of guests eagerly paired off. Neji heard Tenten, hesitant at first, begin to sing out, and he let her musical tones fill his mind and guide his thoughts. His heart was racing in time to the tempo of the song. Or was it rather beating in time to her voice? It had taken a while longer than expected to shake Shizune, and he'd lost his entire party crashing kit before he managed to slip away, but Jiraiya merely shrugged it off. Setbacks happen, and he was never without a backup plan. The old frog sage grinned in anticipation as he strolled up to the warehouse. Tsunad's watchdog should be occupied with his little distraction for a while yet, so he had plenty of time to have some fun at the youngster's expense. He paused to admire the ink menagerie surrounding the entrance. Well, pretty snazzy job there. I see they put that painting kid to good use. One of the beasts roared into life. Tearing itself free of the wall, it bared its fangs at him with menace. Jiraiya merely raised an eyebrow. They're more than simple decorations, Master Jiraiya. The frog sage sent a lazy glance upward. Sai stood a third of the way up the wall, staring at him impassively. They also help me keep out unwanted troublemakers. Yeah, if I see any, I'll let them know. In the meantime, the painter ninja detached from the wall and landed between Jiraiya and the curtained door. By the Hokage's direct order, it's my job to keep you out of this building, Master Jiraiya. The old man smirked and put a hand to his heart mockingly. Gee, that makes me feel terrible. See, you're gonna get fired. He moved to step forward. The ink lion growled again. You will not pass me, Master Jiraiya, Sai said evenly, reaching a hand to his weapon. Jiraiya became completely still, his eyes flickering dangerously. Do you boys really think you can keep me out here by force? He challenged coolly. No, a new voice intoned calmly. The Aberrane kid finally stepped out of the shadows into plain view. But then again, we don't have to. He pointed off into the distance. I've set up a chain of bugs to act as a hotline from here all the way to the Hokage's tower. If you continue to attempt to interfere with this event, Lady Tsunade will know of it within seconds. She is much more qualified to detain and punish, wouldn't you agree? That was finally enough to give Jiraiya pause. An image of Tsunade arriving as a fiery demon, eyes blazing with fury and knuckles cracking with menace, played through his mind. The images that followed sent a shiver down his spine and caused several beads of sweat to form. Clearing his tea, he said, "You bet. Well, I can see you kids are doing all right. Keep up the good work, and give those troublemakers, trouble, okay. Okay, later." Laughing awkwardly, he turned and strolled away. He wasn't giving up, of course. Things had only gotten a bit more interesting. Setbacks happen, after all. The atmosphere had become entrancing. The throng of smiling dances pulsed and swirled in a kaleidoscope of vibrant color. In the dim lamp light, some could swear the stars twinkled overhead. Others who glimpsed the glass fountain mid-twirl saw it splash and spray, and everyone there knew they heard, beneath the rustle of sweet murmurs and the serenade of the traveling musicians, the soothing rush of running water. A young mother's auburn eyes traced the scene softly, her heart longing for the man who would have been here with her even as her arms held tenderly the reminder of their time together. Her son, seated munching his cake on her lap, tugged on a curl of her dark hair absently. She smiled down at him and brushed some frosting from his cheek. Not far away, a man with silver hair lounged on a bench against a wall. Most of his face was covered by a mask and his headband shoved down over one eye. The rest of it was buried in a small book held right up to his nose. Next to him on the bench a woman in shorts and a long coat rested her head on his shoulder, her violet strands of hair mingling with his. Eventually the little boy wandered over and prodded the man's leg. When the man did not respond, the boy tugged on his free hand. And his jaw dropped when the hand pulled free, straw sprinkling to the ground from the severed wrist. He looked up at them to see faces that bore only mismatched buttons for eyes staring back at him. His own eyes widening like saucers, he darted back to his mother and buried his face in her leg, pointing a small shaky finger back over his shoulder. Smiling at his antics, she glanced at the fakes before turning back to the dancers, quickly spying matching shocks of white and purple hair amid the crowd. Neji had come to a decision. He was watching Tenten, whose confidence had finally taken hold. She now enthusiastically pranced about the stage, pouring her heart into her songs. She wore a slinky light blue dress cut in a way to leave her entire left leg bare. A long, ornate dragon traced in gold SN from its tail at her right foot up her leg, across her stomach and back, to its smiling face on her right shoulder. Her customary hair buns were still in place, but a few strands had been freed to doctor over eyes that sparkled with life. She was strikingly beautiful, and he knew he was not the only one to think so. He'd already idly marked half a dozen targets for assassination should they ever look at her the way they had again. It was watching her like this that made him realize a few things. He knew how he felt about her, and how she felt about him. If he did not take this risk, if he backed down from this choice, he would be returning his life to fate's plan, and no matter what anyone else thought, he would hate himself. And his father. Hisashi had SD for family, but he had done so because he knew it was the right thing to do whether the clan willed it or not, and he had encouraged Neji to act with such freedom as well. My father forged his own destiny with his death. I will do so with my life. He nodded solemnly. The thought felt so right. Believe it. A familiar voice called in his head, and he smirked at it. Neji got up and headed for the stage. Naruto and Hinata sat alone at the counter, sipping punch and watching the dance. Shikamaru had been right. A few people had wandered over to congratulate Naruto and wish him luck, and he had politely thanked them and wished them a pleasant evening, but thankfully he and Hinata remained largely out of the spotlight. They weren't exactly rushing to claim it, either. When the party had started, nearly all the other guests had hurried to the dance floor for the first song. It had been so crowded that the two of them agreed it would be prudent to sit it out. As they waited, they got sweets and drinks from Choji, a popular idea, as a great number of people came over immediately after the first dance. The floor had been fairly empty for the second song, but they decided to stay and help Choji set out the refreshments. And then for the third song, they reasoned that they really ought to finish the snacks they'd taken first. But now their cups were nearly empty. Hinata nibbled at the last corner of a tart. The floor had thinned out a fair bit. Choji and Tanbei had left them. In short, they were running out of excuses. Naruto had followed his hefty friend into the crowd with his eyes, and he'd been watching him ever since. Choji was a bit slow on his feet, and Tanbei was herself a bit hesitant, but they managed well enough. They were a relatively conservative dance couple, but overall they looked like they were enjoying themselves thoroughly, in fact. That fact and Choji's words bolstered his nerves. He shot up from his seat and turned a bright grin on a startled Hinata. "I think I'm ready to dance," he proclaimed. "How about you?" Hinata, who had been just as hesitant as Naruto, nevertheless seemed to drink in the confidence he practically beamed to her. She smiled right back, stood up straight and nodded, nervousness banished from her face. "Great," he crowed, seizing her hand. "Let's show these guys a thing or two, huh?" And with that, he fearlessly led her right into the middle of the dance floor. There they remembered what they had to do next and paused a moment. Before they could look around or second-guess themselves, however, Naruto steeled himself and moved his arms and Hinata moved her arms in reaction. Suddenly his hands were on her waist and hers were on his shoulders. Just as the song ended. By the time Neji made his way to the front of the crowd, he saw there was someone new on stage, and he realized it was the missing vocalist. She and Tenten shared a delighted hug, and the older girl raised a round of applause from the guests for the kunoichi. When the cheers died down, she said, "I'm sorry for being late, everyone, but I'm just as glad my good friend Tenten could be here. I couldn't have asked for a better stand-in." Tenten blushed. "In fact, before I take over and let her get back to partying, why don't we let her have one more song?" Tenten gave a start of surprise, but the crowd cheered again. The older girl winked at her, then beamed out at the guests. "Anyone have a special request?" Neji cleared his tea. "I do." He saw Tenten look at him with surprise, then curiosity. He reached for his pocket. For a long moment, it hadn't registered. Naruto and Hinata stood there looking at each other breathlessly, trying to find the music they should start moving to. At the sound of applause, they blinked and looked around. Someone was speaking, and they saw it was the musician's usual singer up on stage. With great effort, they managed to disengage their hands again, and they turned to hear what was being said. They jumped at the sudden sound of a woman's piercing shriek. Naruto dashed toward the source of the cry, wondering both what could have happened and why no one appeared to be concerned. What he saw at the front of the crowd, however, made him pull up short. Tenten had seized Neji firmly round the N, laughing almost hysterically and literally bouncing with elation. Smiling himself, the Hyuga boy swung her in a circle, and by the time they came round again their lips had met. It was then Naruto finally spotted the ring in the little box Tenten clutched tightly in one hand. He shook his head in wonder. So that's what he meant, pretty big decision to be considering, all right. The nearest pairs were reacting to the touching scene warmly, and Naruto found himself among their number. Hinata, who had arrived unnoticed, leaned absently against his side, resting her head on his shoulder, and without thought he looped an arm around her as they watched the new couple. Soon enough, however, the other guests began to move off, and the singer declared a special song in honor of new love. When they noticed their position, Naruto and Hinata jolted apart, each cherry-red and mumbling apologies that trickled into awkward silence. Hinata glanced back at her cousin who was still engaged, in both meanings of the word, and offered quietly, we probably ought to leave them alone for a while. Naruto nodded softly. "Yeah, we can congratulate them later." As the music started up they turned and headed back toward the dance floor. Neji and Tenten had not yet moved or broken off for air. When they squared off to dance again, something made Naruto hitch. An image of Neji's wistful expression earlier that afternoon surfaced in his mind, followed by a flash of the kiss he'd just seen. Almost instantly the focus of the memory centered on the little ring in the box. The words of the Sand Kunoichi's letter echoed through his mind. "If you really care about this girl," he struggled to move his hands against the thoughts clouding his brain. "Ask the question." He blinked, and saw that something was making Hinata hesitate as well. Her hands came up as slowly as his. Their fingertips brushed and Naruto felt waves of electricity pulse through him from the points of contact. He stared dumbly at their hands that seemed to fit so well together, until his gaze eventually wandered upward. When Hinata's face came into view, he saw her eyes rising the same way, and when they met his he knew instantly they had been pondering the same things. Their mouths opened in unison to speak, but no words came forth. At that moment a window on the far wall shattered inward and obnoxious purple smoke began to pour through. The people nearby gave startled cries and pulled back, the shinobi staying in front of the civilians. At the faint sound of a yelp and a crash, however, Naruto just groaned inwardly. I know who that's gotta be, he said tiredly. He turned an apologetic look on Hinata and said, I'll be right back. She turned a confused expression on him in return, but hesitantly she nodded. As he hurried over to the disturbance, Naruto reflected that in a way, he was actually grateful for the distraction. Come, on, guys. We've, had, 7 years, experience at this. We should be, pros by now. Don't, blame us. You're, the one who, put too much, powder in the, pellets again, The owner of the first voice stumbled out of the haze and frowned angrily back over his shoulder. Yeah well gar. A shadowy figure materialized out of the gloom and tackled him. Kono R. UWAA. The boy tried to struggle, but within seconds he was pinned to the ground, a short sword to his end. The last of the smoke cleared away to reveal another boy and a girl held off the ground by swarms of insects. Naruto was the first to reach the scene. As he came to a stop, he shook his head slowly. I knew it. Konohamaru, just what do you think you're doing? Other than trying to breathe. The teen wheezed against the blade pressing against his teeth. From beside Naruto, another voice sighed. Oh, you three had to go for the flashy entrance, didn't you? It's alright, guys, we'll take it from here. Sai glanced back at Shino. The Bugmaster nodded, and his bugs retreated to his coat, dropping Udon and Mogi roughly on their seats. Sai sheathed his blade and got up off their leader. As all three stood and nursed sore spots, Naruto turned to their rescuer. Oh, Sakura, hey. He exclaimed, scratching one hand behind his head. The pink-haired girl gave him an evaluating look and a tight-lipped smile. Good evening, Naruto. Nice to see you too, she said coolly. What is going on here? Ino came storming up, Shikamaru dutifully dragging his feet after her. Shino spoke up. My apologies. We kept him out once already, but then we were preoccupied tracking target 1 and they managed to slip through. Ino gave the intruders a scathing glance and hissed irritably. All right, fine, get going and don't let it happen again. If we need to toss him out, we can do it ourselves. The two dark-clad ninja nodded and vanished as quickly as they had appeared. Konohamaru had by now collected himself and gathered his crew behind him. Toss us out, huh? He huffed. I'd like to see you try. He stomped a foot down and pointed an accusing finger at the blonde girl. And what's the big idea anyway, throwing the boss a party and not inviting us? Yeah, Udon agreed. You hag. Mogi finished. Naruto and Sakura winced. Ino's face froze in a painful-looking smile, eyes gleaming dangerously. If I wanted immature, ill-behaved little brats at my party, she bit out through grinding teeth, I'd have invited the preschool class from the academy. Mogi just crossed her arms and humphed. Konohamaru piped up again. And while we're on the subject, how come we're the last ones to know about the trial by leaves? Udon nodded. If it's our sensei being tested for something, we really ought to be involved. Ino planted her hands on her hips. Now listen here, you. As the argument continued, Sakura frowned. Sensei, she whispered to Naruto. He managed to look proud and embarrassed simultaneously. Recent transfer, he whispered back. The debate was getting loud. Okay, that's it, Ino yelled. Out, out, out. Naruto took a deep breath and stepped forward. Wait, let them stay. They are my squad, I would have invited them myself if I knew they weren't already here. The three younger teens beamed at him. Ino looked about to protest, but Shikamaru spoke up once again. I don't have a problem with that. Actually, it's a good idea. The blonde looked shocked. You are not serious. The lazy ninja just shrugged. Sure. Mogi cheered and Konohamaru pumped a fist in victory. On one condition. Curious looks were everywhere. Condition. Udon inquired. Shikamaru smirked. Your cousin is here, Konohamaru, and I'll bet he's been bored out of his mind. Tilting his head, he indicated the small boy on Kurenai's lap across the way, sitting up as tall as he could and craning his end to peer over the crowd at them. Konohamaru gaped. You've got to be kidding me. Even Saru knew about this. He helped us set it up, Shikamaru joked. Anyway, you can stay if you hang out with him. Ino grinned in understanding. The younger teen recoiled in disgust. No way. We didn't come here to babysit. So what did you come here for? Sakura countered. Konohamaru started to shoot back a sharp reply, but then he paused to consider the question. Hesitantly, he turned to his conspirators, who gave him blank looks and shifted uncomfortably. Naruto sighed. They hadn't thought it through again. It wasn't to break windows, Ino supplied with an evil smile, but we could make you spend all night fixing that one. Was it to dance? Sakura asked with a gleam in her eyes. Because we've been looking for a nice couple to dance up on stage. Alone. In front of everyone. Mogi and Konohamaru paled. Then they shot one glance at each other and flushed red. And no, that's, Konohamaru sputtered. You are? It wouldn't be fair to Udon. The redhead blurted. The other blushing teen perked up. Why yeah, that's it. Udon frowned at them. I don't mind if you guys MMPH. Mogi instantly clamped a hand over his mouth and Konohamaru gave him a punch on the head and wrapped an arm around his N. We can't leave Udon out. We're a team and he's a part of it. He eagerly explained, nearly choking said teammate. Then it's settled, Ino said happily. She waved toward the stage, and the music started up again. The other guests, who had been murmuring amongst themselves, promptly forgot about the disturbance and returned to their evening. Naruto wore a puzzled frown. What was that about? Sakura just rolled her eyes. Of all people, she moved to intercept the trio. Konohamaru, can I have a word with you? About the trials. What? Hey, what? Naruto cried after her. Shikamaru chuckled. Naruto, you're a good guy, but it's really a drag how dense you can be sometimes. You know what, the deal with those two is better than anyone. Naruto looked at him, still puzzled. He opened his mouth. Shouldn't you be getting back to Hinata? Ino asked impatiently, tugging on Shikamaru's shoulder. The lazy boy let himself get pulled along. Naruto shut his mouth again. He still didn't really get it, but Ino was right. He found Hinata waiting patiently where he'd left her. He explained what happened, and they shared a good laugh about the younger kids' antics, but then he mentioned their strange reaction to the idea of dancing together. Hinata blushed and pushed the ends of her fingers together. Naruto blushed too, because he realized they were still on the dance floor and the only couple not moving. After a look around and a long pause, he coughed lightly. Well, I guess we should. He tried to lift his hands and found they were trembling. What is going on? Why am I having so much trouble with this? It's just dancing. Naruto. He jumped. Sakura was approaching, and she looked serious about something. Hello, Sakura, greeted Hinata. The pink-haired girl turned to her and smiled warmly. Good evening, Hinata. I really like your dress. Hinata brightened. Thank you, she said delightedly. Yours is very pretty, too. You think so? Sakura did a twirl. She wore a strapless design, deep crimson with a simple pink circle on the stomach, and the fringes were decorated with creamy off-white embroidery fashioned after cherry blossoms. She shot a scornful glance at Naruto. I'm glad someone noticed. When he threw an arm to the back of his N in embarrassment, by now he was careful not to fap himself with his sleeve, she looked back at the other girl. Anyway, Hinata, can I borrow your date for a while? Naruto frowned. What's up? Sakura gave him an even look. Dance with me. He rocked back. Wah. But, don't you already have a partner? She gave an irritated shrug. He's off being a boy somewhere. You can keep me company for a little while, can't you? Naruto hesitated and glanced over at Hinata. The raven-haired girl looked dismayed at the idea. But, Sakura's angry scowl returned. But nothing. You've barely even said hello to me all night, so I don't think one dance is too much to ask from an old teammate. With that she seized his hand and dragged him away. He tried to jerk free, to no avail. He glanced back toward Hinata, but she was swallowed by the throng of dancers. In desperation, Hinata took a couple steps after them, but 2 or 3 couples swept through, blocking her way. Well, well, a voice said behind her. Kiba smirked at her. If it's going to be a dance for old teammates, I think we fit the bill too, don't you? Sakura, I really think I shouldn't. No time for that, the song is starting. She interrupted, holding up her hands. When he did not move, Sakura pouted. I guess you really don't have time for old friends, she mumbled, sounding hurt. Naruto grimaced. With a defeated sigh, he offered his hands. She grabbed them and placed them on her waist, then took his shoulders and they were off. They'd gone 10 full steps when his brain finally caught up, and he frowned. What in the? He was dancing. Dancing, without the slightest bit of hesitation. What had made it so difficult before? He'd thought it was simple stage fright, but that clearly wasn't the case. It was something to do with Hinata, then. Why was he so afraid to dance with her? He thought back to the last couple of times they'd attempted it. What had made him hesitate? Images flashed by, Neji twirling Tenten and kissing her, a woman in the street praising him and Hinata as a cute couple, himself, sweating as he read a letter from the sand. His pulse sped up and he wrenched his thoughts away before they could tumble out of control. Realization washed over him and he nearly stopped in his tracks. Sakura had to pull him along the steps. He wasn't afraid of the dance at all. The thing he feared was what might follow it. He cared for Hinata, and his feelings had only grown rapidly as they spent time together. He knew, somehow, that the same was true for her. If things continued like this, eventually they would wind up, they would be. His mouth was dry. It was something he'd wondered about several times, but now that he saw a future and a girl with whom it was actually possible, the idea was daunting. How would he handle that commitment? Would he be ready for that responsibility? Would he even have the nerve to ask the question? He didn't know, and he was afraid to find out. Suddenly, there she was. He only caught a flash of her face before Kiba twirled her away from him. Hinata did not follow gracefully, her body was tense, her eyes kept darting over to him, and Naruto saw that she was biting her lip. Once he saw that, Naruto couldn't look away either. Seeing her in another man's arms was an image he just couldn't reconcile, and he grew more and more unsettled the more he saw. Then Kiba spotted him and winked, pulling her a bit closer. Naruto froze. Sakura tugged at him, but something had snapped and it refused to be mended. I'm sorry, Sakura, he murmured. He dropped his hands from her and strode over to the other pair, his jaw clenched. Maybe he was jumping the gun. The future he glimpsed could be far off, or it might not happen at all, but it didn't matter. He didn't know exactly what possibilities lay ahead for him and Hinata, but he didn't care to. They would explore them together as they arrived. There was only now on his mind, and now he wanted to be the one dancing with his girlfriend. He arrived just as Kiba pulled Hinata's hands up and spun her around. Without a word, Naruto shouldered Kiba out of the way and caught Hinata around the waist out of her spin, and his heart did a flip at her expression of surprised joy, seeing who she had returned to. He turned an icy smile on Kiba. Hope you don't mind me cutting in. But Kiba just snorted. Took you long enough. Then he shrugged. Have fun, you two. He spun on his heel and walked away. They watched him approach a group of chatting girls and sneak up on one in particular. She gave a shriek of laughter when he swept her off the ground from behind. Naruto raised an eyebrow. I sure hope he knows her. Hinata nodded. He does. They've been dating for months now. Her face colored and her voice grew quieter. He might even propose soon. Naruto shook his head in disbelief. There it was again. Naruto. Her voice was even softer now. He smirked. That was the future. Back to the present. Yeah. Thank you for coming back to me. He gave her a bright smile. I came here in your company, and I just felt lost without it. Shall we dance? Sakura watched Naruto go with a tender smile on her lips as she backed off the dance floor. Go get her, Naruto. Good luck. I wish you two the best. It would appear your plan was a resounding success. She nodded. Kiba had a good idea. She saw them take one step to the music, but then someone bumped into them, spilling something on Hinata. Sakura chuckled. Naruto could be heard chewing the poor man out from across the room. Several people stopped to see what had happened. Even the musicians paused at the commotion. Well, perhaps mostly successful. But Sakura shook her head slowly, her smile unmoved. He'll take her to get cleaned up, and then they'll be back. And this time he won't hesitate, she said wistfully. Her smile faded, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. You are sad, Sakura? No, just a bit lonely. I see. You know, by name, I am your escort tonight. If it would make you smile again, I would be honored to have this dance. Sakura turned to Rock Lee, resplendent in his spiffy green suit and sincere expression. She did give him another smile. All right, just one. Tanbei sat on one of the cafe stools, head lolled forward and eyes closed, letting her muscles melt. With one hand, Choji kneaded her shoulders. The other massaged the calf and foot of the leg laid across his own. All I said was that I felt like sitting down for a bit, she mumbled. Choji just smiled and tapped her other leg. As she shifted to pull it up next to the one he had, one of the bouquets he'd bought for her even over her protests that she didn't need any slipped and fell to the ground. She made a feeble attempt to grab it, but Choji gently held her back. No, I'll get it. She frowned at him as he got up and bent over to retrieve her flowers. You're not going to let me do anything tonight, are you? She said irritably. Not if I can help it, he joked, setting the bouquet on her lap. He took his seat again. When we got here and they needed help finishing setup, you sat me at a table and made me promise not to move. He pulled her feet up. That's right, you wouldn't let me help give out refreshments either. Nope. He resumed her massage. Her shoulders turned to putty under his fingers, but she still glared at him accusingly. You bring my own food and drink to me. You pick up things I drop. You give me a massage when I need just a moment's rest. He just smiled at her. She turned a bit so he could reach a new spot on her back and side. It's unfair. You keep hogging all the work, and I can't have any. I'm selfish that way, he agreed. You didn't have any problem letting Naruto and Hinata help out. My request said, one overworked volunteer to spend a relaxing evening. Naruto and Hinata were friends helping out a friend just like I'm doing now. Before she could argue, he stopped and looked at her seriously. You've had aches and pains for weeks now because you break your back every day pulling, planting, painting, and running all over town. I'm a shinobi. I'm used to the workload, so I'm going to do my best to make sure a tired body gets its badly needed rest. He patted her leg and smiled again. You spend almost all of your time making everyone else's lives easier. Just for tonight, let yourself be a princess, and let me treat you like one. Tanbei blushed rather nicely. She gave his arm a weak punch as a final sign of protest, but she wore a pleased smile as she rested her head on his shoulder. Choji Akamaiki, I challenge you. They looked up to see Rock Lee in a heroic pose, finger pointing right at Choji. The hefty boy blinked. Hi, Lee. What are you talking about? An epic battle of culinary proportions. A clash of iron wills and fiery appetites to see whose stomach is supreme. Choji gave him a blank look. Lee, I'm not going to fight you in the middle of the party if that's what you want. Tanbei was eyeing him curiously. Hesitantly, she said, I think he means an eating contest. Lee smiled with confidence. Yes, exactly, though put in the simplest terms. Now Choji looked even more confused. Lee, you know you can't win one of those with me. What's going on? You may be the champion, but my cause has always been to fight the battles of the underdog. As such I shall do my best to dethrone you. He hesitated, then leaned forward, clapped a hand on the other boy's shoulder, and whispered conspiratorially, if the truth must be known, this is a challenge I myself received during a rousing game of truth or dare, and you know I am never one to refuse a challenge. Choji glanced behind Lee and finally saw the 3 grinning teens and one positively beaming 4-year-old. He laughed. Is that so? In that case, it would be rude to refuse. As Lee turned to give the thumbs up to the kids, Tanbei hopped up. Great. I'll get the food and be the judge. Her escort caught her hand and gave her a stern look. She leaned right up to his face and winked. Pamper a princess too much and she gets fat and selfish. You can dote on me later, my champion. She gave him a kiss on the cheek and freed her hand while he was distracted. Several moments later, a tall glass of punch and a mountain of pastries towered before each challenger. The kids gathered close behind, ready to cheer him on. Tanbei stood on the far side of the counter, holding 2 napkins up high. Smiling broadly, she snapped them downward. Begin. Lee stepped outside and leaned against the wall, one hand on his stomach. He'd put forth a valiant effort, but the eating champion had still beaten him handily. Still, he figured that if he tried to eat 100 bowls of ramen and do 4,000 stomach crunches a day, then maybe he'd be ready for a rematch. Pissed. Lee frowned and glanced around. Pissed. He turned toward the noise and caught a glimpse of white hair before whoever it was ducked behind a building. An enemy. He smiled. If it was, there was nothing like a good battle to work off a full stomach. Lee trotted off to investigate. Ino took one more look around. Everyone looked happy. She let out the breath she'd been holding all night and let herself have a moment to rest before checking on the door guards. When she felt arms snaking around her waist, she jumped and started to turn. Relax, Ino, it's just me, Shikamaru said. He hugged her again, and she slumped back against him. He spoke soothingly in her ear. You're tense. Seriously, relax. Party successful, mission complete. She grimaced and tried to pull away. Shino and Sai are doing the job just fine. He wouldn't let go. Ino shook her head. The brat squad turned out to be more help than harm. We were trying to figure out what to do about Saru, remember? The decorations are up. The musicians are all here, happy, and playing. The guests are all fed, happy, and dancing. He dropped a kiss on her cheek and she paused. I think it's about time you joined your own party. He chuckled. After all, I can't enjoy myself until you do. She snorted. Selfish slacker. She quit trying to get away and settled into his arms. He smirked. Troublesome busybody. They stood there watching the dance floor for a long moment in silence. Absently, they began to sway to the music. Ino frowned as she thought of something. Shikamaru. I've been wondering. Yeah. What was that letter? She felt him tense up. What letter? She frowned and turned her head to look at him. Don't play dumb with me. I saw Naruto hand you a letter hours ago when he got here. What was it? Shikamaru looked her right in the eye. Nothing. Junk mail. Her mouth opened in disbelief and she stopped their swaying dance. Ha! Naruto would not have bothered to deliver junk mail. What are you hiding from me? Maybe I'll tell you in a month. Shikamaru. She turned in his arms to face him directly. He shrugged. Maybe I'll show you in a week. He chuckled. Look, it's nothing to worry about, I promise. He put on a sly smirk and pulled back far enough that his hands were on her waist. And if you're going to be troublesome about it, maybe I just won't dance with you. Her eyes narrowed. Ha, I'd love to see you try to find another girl who can tolerate a lazy slob like you. She reached her hands up to his shoulders. I could probably look all my life and not find a one. Guess that means we're stuck together. His mouth drifted forward. So did hers. Guess it does. There she is. Hey, hag lady. Ino froze. Shikamaru's head slumped forward. What do you want, Konohamaru? He called tiredly. Something to do would be nice. We're bored crazy here. Konohamaru's obstinate pose and expression was mirrored by Mogi. Udon shifted like he wanted to apologize, and Saru just looked excited. So find something. You're clever ninja. Don't be a drag. Shikamaru was eyeing Ino carefully. The blonde girl was staring off into space where she'd frozen, and she looked all too much like she was pondering various methods of He decided he'd better deal with this quickly. Mogi shrugged. We did everything we can think of. We even tried hide and seek, for Cage's sake. Konohamaru added. Saru piped up. We thought we found a monster in town, Uncle Shika. Shikamaru snorted with amusement. Oh yeah. Did you now? Udon raised his hand. Yeah, but that just turned out to be a Kamaru being a guard dog at the door. Konohamaru crossed his arms behind his head. Anyway, like I said, we're bored and we've run out of ideas. And how is that our problem? Ino ground out, jerking back into reality. The younger teen shrugged. You're the one who planned this whole thing. Don't you have anything else to do? Before Ino could make the suggestion she looked like she dearly wanted to, Shikamaru cleared his tea. They each whirled on him, and he winced. I should be getting paid for this, I have a thought. He pulled a small radio from his pocket and spoke into it. Hey Sai, you there? A crackle, and then a voice came through. Go, remember that thing you brought. He saw Ino smile. Looks like we could use it after all. Get it out of storage and bring it in, would you? Sai voiced an affirmation and the radio quieted. Shikamaru put it back away and refused to notice all the curious looks he was getting. A handful of moments later, the painter ninja appeared, carrying. You've got to be kidding. A piñata, Konohamaru exclaimed in dismay. How little kids can you get? Sai blinked at him. It was, in fact, a colorful paper-mache fox on a string, complete with a whacking stick. Shikamaru took the thing from Sai and dismissed him. He turned to Konohamaru with a smirk. Little kids, huh? You forgetting that one of your group is a little kid. Ino took the stick from Shikamaru and offered it to him. Besides, if it's so easy, let's see you take a swing at it, big boy, she said with a smug look. Shikamaru held the string and dangled the piñata directly in front of himself. With the rest of his group egging him on, Konohamaru grumblingly took the stick, aimed, and swung. Far to the left of his target. He yelped in surprise as he toppled through empty space. Mogi was stunned. Konohamaru, where are you swinging, boss? Udon asked, puzzled. Yeah, where are you swinging, kid? Ino taunted. Growling, he got up and again swung far off the mark, this time the other way. By the fifth such attempt, Ino was practically laughing her head off, thoroughly irking Konohamaru. What's going on? He yelled. What's the trick to this thing? Shikamaru chuckled. Glad you finally asked. See, a genjutsu has been applied to both the piñata and the stick. As long as you're holding the stick, you'll have a tough time finding your target. He tossed it to Udon, who stared at it admiringly. Go hang that up somewhere and see how long that'll distract you. The four of them ran off excitedly. He smirked as he turned to Ino. See what I mean? She glanced at him, puzzled. He nodded after the departing kids. More help than harm. They sure gave you a good chuckle. Great stress reliever. She snorted and gave a reluctant smile. They turned toward each other. Now then, where were we? She stepped closer. I believe we were just about to go dance. I'm pretty sure you were going to kiss me first, though. He sn his arms around her. Sounds like a drag. His head started dipping toward her. Sounds troublesome, she agreed. She met him halfway. Naruto couldn't believe their bad luck. First it was that thing with Neji and Tenten, then Konohamaru and his friends, and then Sakura and Kiba. Then, when he'd finally rid himself of doubts, some jerk spilled his drink on Hinata. Naruto had made absolutely certain that Guy knew what he thought of that, but apparently he'd drawn some attention doing so. When they tried to return to the floor after cleaning up Hinata's dress, a crowd of well-wishers stood in their way. Several wanted to know if they were going steady. By the time the two of them finally got free again, the musicians announced they'd be taking a break. Several such inconveniences had followed. In short, it seemed as if the whole world was conspiring to keep Naruto and Hinata from dancing with each other. They'd not taken more than 15 rhythmical steps together over the entire evening. This, of course, made Naruto more determined than ever to do so. Now as they tried once again to take the dance floor, he glared kunai at everyone around them, daring the world to try interfering again. This turned out to be a bad idea. With a tremendous crash, a section of wall disintegrated. Guy-sensei, I'm ready to train. A voice warbled. As the dust settled, Rock Lee, wobbly on his feet, squinted unfocused eyes out at the crowd staring curiously back at him. Guy-sensei. He sounded totally baffled. Where are you? Naruto exchanged a glance with Hinata and saw they both knew what had to be done. He gave her a quick peck on the cheek. We'll get one in tonight, I promise. Help keep the crowd back. Hinata was clearly disappointed, but she nodded. BBC careful, they split off. Naruto was already forming a hand sign as he ran. That guy said you were here, Guy-sensei. So where? Lee saw a blurry mass of color begin to get further away, and several other things, people, maybe. Getting closer. Lee didn't care. None of them seemed to be Guy-sensei. Then he spotted something green off to the side that was moving, too. He felt his face twist into a stupid grin. Guy-sensei, I found you. He took off running as fast as he could, but the room was making it difficult. The ground kept pitching and swaying. Something blue like a river swept by underneath, but when he tried to look at it, the pavement reached up and slapped him. Several of the people things came flying past. It looked like they were trying to hit him. An obstacle course. The training had already started. He whooped at the challenge and plowed his way through. He stumbled under or around most of them, but the stupid moving ground threw him right into one several times, and then puffy white smoke would wash across his already blurry vision. He smiled bigger yet. He wasn't doing too well, but this was great training. Choji caught Naruto before he could slam into the cafe counter. The two of them dove out of the way just in time. Lee tripped as he arrived, and instantly the place was pulverized, snacks and drinks flying every direction. Kiba turned to shield himself from the volleys. He heard the drunken boy say in a puzzled voice, Jigai-sensei, you turned into a mountain of cookies. A pause. Woohoo! Cookies. Wahahaha. Lee came barreling chaotically out of the debris cloud, stuffing his face with sweets. Shikamaru yanked Kiba out of the way before he could get flattened. Great, the lazy boy said with exasperation. Now we've got to deal with a sugar rush, too. I thought you said nothing was spiked. Naruto exclaimed as he and Choji got to their feet. Nothing is. Whatever he got from outside. We can figure that stuff out later. Snapped Ino. Lee was doing a bizarre, lopsided dance that might vaguely have resembled warm-up stretches. Kiba quirked an eyebrow. What is he? Lee stood upright so quickly he fell flat on his back. Bouncing right back up, he yelled, oh okay, time for 300 L laps. They all looked at each other, sharing the same thought. Oh, no. What followed was chaos. Lee wove to and fro at random across the dance floor, laughing like the madman he was as he somehow dodged every attempt his friends made to catch hold of him. At one point, he swung away from Neji's grabs like a wet noodle, bending at impossible angles from his ankles before bowling the Hyuga's legs out from under him. A bit later he leapt over a sliding tackle from Kiba and belly flopped to the concrete. When Choji's massive hand tried to pin him down, he rolled up on his face and bounced away on his head, cackling with glee. Shikamaru finally managed to snag Lee with his shadow, freezing him in place. Before anyone could stop her, Ino fired her signature jutsu. One of Naruto's clones caught her limp body and an instant later she was back to it, one hand shooting to her head, the other to her stomach. Ooh. Bad idea, she groaned. Her hand moved to her mouth. I think, I'm going to be sick. The clone dropped her in alarm. Hey. Lee's face scrunched in a frown. That was weird, oh well. He tried to sprint, but since his feet were still anchored by shadow he just fell flat, making Shikamaru jerk forward with a yelp. Bam! Shikamaru let go of Lee's shadow. One clumsy roll and the drunken fool was off again. Most of the male ninja had left the crowd huddled by the stage to help. Most of them wished they hadn't. Even as Lee made cracks in the pavement with his own various appendages, he was happy to help his would-be captors make their own. Everyone else, when they'd gotten over their initial alarm, found Lee's antics very entertaining. Cheers arose for the boys' efforts, followed by teases and wild laughter when they failed. Midway through one of his laps, Lee looked over toward the cheers and caught sight of the big glass fountain. Ooh, pretty, he said, oblivious to the fact he was hurtling toward it. Ino was horrified. No, not the fountain. Naruto panicked. Lee, it's Sakura, he blurted. Lee promptly biffed it flat out, digging a small trench with his face. Pulling his head from the new gravel, he called back, Sakura. A dozen faces turned to Naruto. Yeah, he looked around frantically. She's lost in town. She needs your help. On hearing this, Sakura nodded and ducked behind cover. Lee got up. Two young men seized his arms and then flew yelping through the air as he spun to see where town was. He tried to strike his nice guy pose, but the alcohol ruined the effect. I'm coming, Sakura. He dashed toward the fake shops and plowed right through the first wall he came to. Naruto winced, aware of Ino's eyes boring angrily into his back, before he and the rest pursued. Even though the spectators couldn't see the shenanigans anymore, they could still hear, and that was somehow even more humorous. Lee, calm down. You're joking, right? Sakura, where are you? Crash. I got him. Look out. Wah oof. Don't got him. Seesaw, what was I doing? Shadow clone jutsu. Augh. Wham. The ground trembled. Hey, you okay? Get your knee off my stomach. Wait, anyone see him? Where did he? Peekaboo. I see you. Wahaha. Gar. Bam. That is not going to work, you have to. I know. You don't have to tell me. Oh no, He's not really going to. Purty leets, the sound of breaking glass. Fizzle fizzle. I'm gonna K him. I'm gonna K him. That was Eno. Hey, we don't need another crazy here. Such a drag. Ooh, hick, ooh. Where'd he get a paper bomb? That's not a sea cookie. Boom. The girls who weren't incapacitated by laughter turned to shield themselves from falling wood chips. Akamaru. Circle around and wheel. I'll get him. Konohamaru. Wait. Now. The sounds finally grew quiet except for the dull roar of the crowd, of course. The frog sage leapt from rooftop to rooftop, laughing so hard he almost stumbled several times. True, he hadn't gotten to do it himself, but it had been perfect, oh so priceless. Jiraiya. A very angry Shizune who had finally gotten free of his distraction was right on his heels with the two door guards. Looks like you've still got some watermelon on your face, Shizune. He called back jovially. She made a sound like a screeching cat. Get back here. He laughed. You can't prove anything. You can't prove anything. Naruto had asked her to stay with the civilians, but Hinata couldn't help herself, they were safe and she was worried. If there was anything she could do to help. But when she turned the corner, she saw that it was already over, there was splintered wood and cracked pavement everywhere, a couple guttering flames, one large crater, and a lot of exhausted-looking young men, but no Rock Lee running amok. A second later she spotted him, still babbling and struggling mightily but futilely in the grips of Kiba, Konohamaru and 4 Narutos. One of the blonde boys saw her and grinned triumphantly. Choji grunted. So, we got him, now what? Ino was irate. Get him out of here. Kiba rolled his eyes. Great. Where do we take him? I don't care. Just get him gone. Neji looked thoughtful. There is a psych ward 2 blocks away. There are rooms built to contain ninja, where Lee should be safe until he sobers. Hinata frowned. She thought she saw an evil smile sprout on one of the Narutos, but when she looked again he turned away. A psych ward? Huh. Know where that is, Konohamaru. The younger boy had a strange glint in his eye as he answered. Sure thing, boss. Kiba didn't notice either oddity. Hey Akamaru, he called, go find Nomi and make sure she's okay. I'll be right back. A 5th Naruto jogged up and gave Hinata a big hug. Like he says, right back. With a sly wink, he headed out with the rest of them. Hey, someone spoke up. Anyone else smell that? Konohamaru got the door. Kiba and the Narutos moved Lee through into the padded containment room. There they stopped. Kiba looked around. Okay, we got him in here. Any clue how we get out without him? He didn't like the look he was getting from each of his friends' faces. Puff, 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 puff. He dropped the leg he'd been holding and jumped for the door to find it slammed shut. The lock clicked. What's going on, guys? He asked nervously. Lee was slow getting up, but he was getting up. Don't sound so surprised, Kiba, Naruto taunted through the window. Konohamaru wore a smirk identical to his teacher's. After all, you've been earning this for a while lately. Kiba's eyes narrowed and he nodded slowly in understanding. This is payback for the Forest of Death, isn't it? Lee was looking around on wobbling legs. And tonight, it's like a fairy tale, the jerk gets his just rewards in the end. He waved goodbye. Have fun, you two. Konohamaru took the window when Naruto turned away. Hey Lee. Kiba just said your sensei smells like a monkey. Fart. When the two of them returned to the warehouse, they found everyone outside. Kiba's date came up to them and asked about him. Naruto mentioned that he'd volunteered to stay with Lee until he was better. Akamaru was nearby but thankfully napping. She said it was very sweet of Kiba to be looking out for a friend, to which Konohamaru had snickered and replied, oh, he's watching out all right. Naruto gave him a panicked sock on the head, made a hasty escape, and went to find his girlfriend. He found his other friends first. Asked what was in that piñata, sigh. Ino was demanding. I did not inquire. The shop owner only said it was great fun. Shikamaru looked suspicious. What store? Kai's novelty and practical jokes. The lazy boy sighed and Ino made a disgusted noise. Naruto saw Hinata and walked up to her. Hi again. What's going on? Oh, welcome back, Naruto. She pushed the tips of her 2 fingers together, looking embarrassed. What happened was, I mean. Konohamaru's squad and little Saru had been playing with a piñata Sai brought, Sakura supplied as she stepped over to them. Seems it finally got broken open somehow or other, but the thing turned out to be filled with stink bombs. We managed to get everyone out before it got too bad, but it's not going to be pleasant in there for several hours at least. Hinata nodded uncomfortably. Naruto glanced around for Konohamaru, but he and the rest of his squad seemed to have disappeared, likely for self-preservation. Well, I guess that's it, Shikamaru said, glancing at Ino. It was getting close to time anyway. She nodded, then raised her voice to the crowd. Listen up, everyone. It's getting late, and obviously our main party hall is. She glared at Sai. He didn't react, unavailable. So the main part of the night is now over. If you're getting tired or you've had enough, now is a good time to go home. She smiled. However, if anyone feels like more, just follow us. She and Shikamaru walked off toward another building. Neji and Tenten, still attached at the arm, were the first couple after them. Kurenai carried a drowsy 4-year-old off to bed. As the rest of the crowd split up, some leaving and some following, Naruto turned to the ladies beside him. Well, what do you think? He asked. Hinata blushed. I would like to see continue, if that's all right. We still haven't had that dance. He grinned. Of course. I hoped you were going to say that. We still haven't had that dance. But Sakura shook her head. Sorry guys, I think I'm going to call it quits. At Naruto's expression, she gave a reassuring smile. Don't worry, it has nothing to do with you. I'm just getting tired. He searched her with uncertainty. All right, but just don't stay up too late alone, okay? She nodded. Good night, Naruto. Good night, Hinata, it was good seeing you. They responded in kind, and she left. Hinata tentatively stepped closer to her boyfriend and was reassured to feel his arm wrap around her. As she looked up at his grinning face, he said, well, let's go. We don't want to be left behind, right? The remaining guests filed into a room that could best be described as plain. It was perfectly square, relatively roomy, and uniformly painted a dull shade of gray. Naruto was unimpressed. I gotta say, Ino, after that warehouse, this place is kind of disappointing. As the musicians set up, Ino just flashed a secret smile and pressed a button on the wall. A trap door opened in the ceiling and a large ball made of small square mirror tiles lowered down. Tenten got everyone's attention. This room is very plain. But, with this device, Neji placed his hand on a control and pumped some chakra into it. The ball glowed blue for a second, and then. Whoa, Naruto said with awe. Beautiful, Hinata breathed. Several gasps went up in agreement. They and the rest of the guests now stood on a vast beach, a dazzling sunset before them. We can be absolutely anywhere, Tenten finished proudly. Another flash of blue light and they were in a jungle clearing before a sparkling waterfall, then on a flat snowy mountaintop gazing out over cloudy sky. Chakra is fed into the mirror ball, which then projects a potent genjutsu through its special tiles. For our first dance here, I thought we'd go with our original theme. She placed her hand over her fiancé's, and have a night under the stars. The blue light washed through the room again and left them in the void of space, surrounded and illuminated by thousands of twinkling pinpricks of light. So, what do you guys think now? Naruto strode slowly into the middle of the room. A comet zipped by beneath his feet. Without a word, he turned and held his hand out toward the crowd. Smiling, Hinata came and took it. Countless pairs of admiring eyes were on him, but Hinata didn't notice. It had been her secret prayer that something magical would happen tonight, and being here, dancing through the wondrous heavens with the man of her dreams, was beyond her wildest hopes. She pressed her cheek to his chest and sighed with contentment. Here in his arms everything just felt so right, she wished she could stay there forever. A secret smile came to her lips as a song surfaced in her mind. It was so perfect for them and then that she just couldn't hold it in. It was an old song, one he probably wouldn't know, but even so she sang it softly enough that he wouldn't hear. Standing here in the moonlight. Will you be my shadow? She gave a start and looked up. He wore a warm smile and tenderly stroked her cheek. When she only stared, pink and breathless, he glanced around him admiringly and continued the song, staring up at the night sky. Her eyes watered, her heart felt like it would burst. Will you be my star? He turned that smile on her again and she just melted. Take my hand, I'll guide you through the future. Tears of joy streaming freely, she buried her face in his chest and hugged him even tighter. Take my hand, I'll follow near or far. They hummed the rest together, wandering through the melody as they wandered through the heavens. This would truly be a night to remember. On a hill overlooking the hidden leaf village but well outside its bounds stood a figure enshrouded in shadow. Two red eyes burned like coals within its hood, boring down on one building in particular. So, he's taken with the Byakugan girl. That was interesting. The Byakugan was a useful bloodline trait on its own. What would it be like, backed with the fox's power? The black pattern across the crimson irises blurred for a half instant. The F around it twitched in annoyance. After 3 years these new eyes still had not fully adjusted to his body. It was true the time to strike was still far off, but still the fact was vexing. At some imperceptible signal, the half-dozen silhouettes hunched down behind him pulled languidly upright. As he turned to go, he cast one last look toward the village. Grow stronger, Naruto Uzumaki. Produce a powerful bloodline for me, and you shall make the perfect prize to round out my collection. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.